For today we have a GPU comparison, this time the RTX 3060 versus the Intel Arc A770 versus the RX 7600. And this comparison is actually happening right now because all these GPUs are more or less on the same price. In Newegg US, you can get the 3060 12GB at $289, the A770 8GB, which is exactly the same GPU as the 16GB, but with 8GB, meaning the performance will be the same, at $309, minus $20 of discount, so putting it at $289 as well. And the RX 7600 at $269 with also promotional code to take off $10, putting it at $259, meaning the RX 7600 is the cheapest card in USA. But what about European prices? At Mindfactory Dutchland we have the 3060 12GB at €287, the A770 8GB as well at €298, and the RX 7600 at €278, meaning once again that the RX 7600 is the cheapest card, but at the same time the prices are way more equivalent than on US, where the 7600 is like $30 cheaper. But the question is, which card should you get at roughly the same price? Should you get the A770 from Intel? Should you get just the RTX 3060 because it is still a decent card? Or should you go to the newest RDNA 3 edition from AMD, the RX 7600? Well, before anything, let's go to our sponsor. Today's sponsor is Maximum Settings, a cloud-based gaming service where you won't need to spend thousands of dollars to upgrade your PC or a personal nuclear plant to boot up your system.
Just do it!
And for as low as 9.95 Canadian dollars a month, you can play the most recent games on your computer even if your hardware isn't prepared. And if you don't play that much, well, you can just use the hourly system for as little as 0.35 Canadian dollars. Sign up today for your full Linux gaming PC with no resource sharing and start enjoying high-level gaming on any PC. And all said and done, let's go to the benchmarks.
He's going to catch us! Keep running!
Plague Tale Requiem is one of those games that really takes advantage of your GPU's physical units, and that's why the Arc A770 manages to present very nice results at 1080p, actually being 13% faster than the RTX 3060, with the RX 7600 being the top dog at this resolution. At 1440p though, things actually change, with the Intel GPU outperforming the RX 7600 by 5% and the RTX 3060 by 19%. Although we shall take in consideration that the frame times in some parts of the game with the Arc GPU are quite bad and might be a turn-off for most people. But well, at 4K, things don't really change much, with the Arc A770 being the best performer, but not really much above the RX 7600. As you can see in the video that I recently released, Assassin's Creed Unity got a massive performance uplift with the new Intel drivers, but sadly, Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Valhalla are still performing quite poorly. In this case, at 1080p the RX 7600 is 26% faster than the RTX 3060 and a whopping 55% faster than the Arc A770. At 1440p, the Arc A770 starts getting closer to the RTX 3060, being only 14% slower, with the RX 7600 dominating the charts easily, something that only changes at 4K, where the CPU bottleneck goes entirely away and we have the Arc A770 almost matching the RTX 3060, that is now only slightly slower than the RX 7600. RDNA 3 GPUs like Cyberpunk 2077, and that's why we see the RX 7600 outperforming both GPUs while consuming less power, even with the massive performance increase the Arc A770 had in the previous patch that made it faster than the RTX 3060. At 1440p, due to a narrower buzz width, the RX 7600 starts losing some ground, still being the fastest card, but only slightly faster than the Arc A770. And at 4K, the Arc A770 finally manages to surpass both the other two cards due to its wider buzz width and raw power, being the only card able to achieve over 30 average FPS. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 favors a lot the AMD GPUs, especially the RDNA 3 ones, and it shows. Even though we have some stutters here and there with the RX 7600 due to very green drivers, it is still at 1080p the best performer by far, being 35% faster than the RTX 3060 and 42% faster than the Arc A770. At 1440p the differences are still relevant as both Intel and Nvidia cards don't even reach the 60 average FPS, while the AMD card delivers 73, a much smoother experience. And at 4K the RX 7600 is still slightly faster, but we're talking about a mild difference of 3 average FPS, which in real gameplay wouldn't be noticeable, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Forza Horizon 5 is one of those games where the RX 7900 series don't perform as well as they should, and I suspect that was due to the MCM design. But since the RX 7600 uses a monolithic die, it completely stomps over the competition, being at 1080p 27% faster than the RTX 3060 and 28% faster than the Arc A770. As we go into 1440p, the Arc A770 starts performing quite better than the RTX 3060, mostly in the 1% lows, where it is 10% faster. And at 4K, due to a narrower buzz width, the RX 7600 goes from being the fastest card to being the slowest, with the Arc A770 being the only card getting close to 60 average FPS. Hogwarts Legacy doesn't have the Arc A770 results without resizable bar, as the game would randomly close itself without it. At 1080p, the RTX 3060 and Arc A770 are once again tied, with the RX 7600 delivering 86 average FPS, being around 20% faster than both the other two cards. At 1440p, the hierarchy gets maintained, but the performance advantage the RX 7600 had gets smaller, now being only 10%. And at 4K, both the RX 7600 and Arc A770 get really close to the 30 average FPS mark, while the RTX 3060 stays in the low 20s.
Approach Cessna Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra is type Cessna 152.4 miles south.
In Microsoft Flight Simulator using high settings, the Arc A770 is performing extremely well, being at the same level as the RX 7600, more or less, with both being considerably faster than the RTX 3060. Something that does not change at 1440p, where the RTX 3060 can't even achieve 54 average FPS, while the other two cards are above 62. Something that can be actually felt, at least with my trained eyes. As for 4K, well, the RTX 3060 gets smashed even further, now being below the 30 average FPS mark, with the other two cards pushing a little above it. Interesting results for the Arc A770 here. Rainbow Six Extraction is our first Vulkan benchmark, and as expected the Arc A770 is easily outmatching the RTX 3060 by 13%, with the RX 7600 delivering more average FPS, but less 1% lows. At 1440p though the tables turn, and the Arc A770 shows its true power, now outperforming both the other two cards by a considerable amount. And at 4K the RX 7600 is basically matching the RTX 3060, but with higher 1% lows, while the Arc A770 is the only card getting close to the 60 average FPS mark. On Red Dead Redemption 2, our second Vulkan title, the Arc A770 shows us that having a big dick means nothing if it is also thin. In this case, it has the best average FPS of the three cards, but it also has the lowest minimums, meaning the gameplay won't be as smooth as with the other cards. And that doesn't change at 1440p, still having the lowest minimums, but now pulling considerably ahead of the RTX 3060, being 29% faster. And believe me, you can notice the difference of going from 57 to 73 FPS. And at 4K, well, the Arc A770 is still the best performer, with the RTX 3060 and the RX 7600 being really close to each other. In Guardians of the Galaxy, things get a bit messy. To begin with, the Arc A770 couldn't run it properly without resizable bar, and strangely the RX 7600 performed considerably worse than the RTX 3060, even with less CPU overhead. At 1440p the Arc A770 almost catches up with the RTX 3060 in terms of averages, but once again delivers horrible 1% lows. And at 4K, a wider bus width and more physical units matter the most, but even then, the RX 7600 actually does an outstanding job and virtually matches the other two cards. Getting closer to the final line, we have The Last of Us, where the Intel GPU performs poorly. Maybe with recent patches it got a bit better, but these results are actually pretty recent, so I don't believe that's the case. At 1080p, the RX 7600 is indeed the fastest card, being 10% faster than the RTX 3060 and 35% faster than the Arc A770, delivering the best overall experience. At 1440p, the Arc A770 gets less CPU overhead and starts catching up with the RTX 3060, but both cards are still quite behind the RX 7600 that is pulling around 55 average FPS. And at 4K, well, it's kind of a disaster, with none of these cards even achieving the mighty console experience of 30 average FPS. Our last rasterization title is God of War. At 1080p the RX 7600 is completely annihilating the other two cards, being 28% faster than the RTX 3060 and 45% faster than the Arc A770. At 1440p the RX 7600's advantage gets much shorter, but the card is still outperforming the other two by a fair amount. And at 1440p ultra-wide it is exactly the same. The RX 7600 is actually the only card here being really close to the 60 average FPS mark, meaning that if you decrease one or two settings to high, you would easily get around 70 average FPS, which is a much more enjoyable number. As for the 12 games average, the RX 7600 is actually pretty good, while costing less than the RTX 3060, or at least the same. It is 18% faster at 1080p, 16% faster at 1440p, and 6% faster at 4K. The Arc A770, on the other hand, barely matches the RTX 3060 at 1080p, but shows its true Power Ranger spirit at 1440p and 4K, where it is 8% faster. Overall, great results, or at least interesting ones to see. Let's move to ray tracing.
We're not from here either. Stellantis locked us up here a year ago.
The first ray tracing benchmark is the full ray tracing game Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition. This is one of the few scenarios where the RX 7600 is considerably faster than the RX 6650 XT, and yet gets demolished by the Arc A770 that is 41% faster at 1080p, 53% faster at 1440p, and 78% faster at 4K, which is insane, letting me eager to see what Intel's next GPUs will bring in terms of ray tracing performance. Moving to Cyberpunk 2077, we now have the RTX 3060 delivering the best results, which is understandable as this game is Nvidia's poster boy for ray tracing. In here, the RTX 3060 is 8% faster than the Arc A770 when using ray tracing, and 14% faster when using ray tracing plus DLSS. The RX 7600 isn't that bad when using FSR as well, but not even close to the performance numbers of the RTX 3060. And that's even worse or more noticeable at 1440p, where the RX 7600 fails completely, needing FSR to beat the native ray tracing results of the other two cards, which is quite pathetic actually. Resident Evil 4 though shows another facet. This time the RX 7600 actually handles its own even when using ray tracing, actually surpassing the RTX 3060 by 10% and matching the Arc A770. At 1440p, even the RX 7600 loses some ground, but it is still faster than the RTX 3060, with the Arc A770 being considerably faster and still achieving the 60 average FPS mark, being only at 4K that the RX 7600 finally loses to the RTX 3060, in terms of ray tracing performance, even though it is considerably faster without it, with the Arc A770 being once again the best overall performer, with good rasterization and the better ray tracing one. And the last ray tracing benchmark is Spider-Man Remastered. At 1080p, the RX 7600 actually delivers the best performance due to the lower CPU overhead, but as soon as we enable ray tracing, it falls behind the other two cards, with the Arc A770 actually being the best performer, something that doesn't really change at 1440p, if anything, gets worse, with the Arc A770 being 16% faster than the RTX 3060 and 40% faster than the RX 7600. And as we go to 4K, the RX 7600 only delivers 20 average FPS, while the other two cards deliver at least 30. Major difference.
Brother!
As for the upscaling results though, in God of War things are interesting because both AMD and Nvidia GPUs are getting performance out of upscaling, but not the Arc A770. And I assume that's because of the massive CPU overhead presented here, since God of War runs DirectX 11, something that gets confirmed as we go to 1440p ultra-wide, with the RX 7600 and RTX 3060 getting a massive 24% FPS boost, while the Arc A770 gets a mild 9%. The last benchmark is once again Spider-Man Remastered. This game has been recently updated to XeSS 1.1, so performance differences might occur. I will though retest all the GPUs I have with XeSS 1.1 for the next videos. As for the results here, we have all the cards performing exceptionally poor with XeSS, besides the Arc A770 obviously, that is the best performer at native resolution and also when using upscalers, with XeSS delivering a smoother experience than FSR with the Intel GPU. It seems Intel is moving on the right path in the GPU market, and I'm actually liking what I see. But well, let's move to the conclusion. So guys, concluding, what do you think about these cards? Let me know in the comment section, what do you think about the performance of these cards? As for my opinion, there are always pros and cons depending on the card that you get or on the card that you want. For example, the RTX 3060 has more gigabytes, so has more VRAM than the other two cards, if we are counting on the A770 being the 8 gigabytes version. And it has a middle term ray tracing performance, in most cases being even better than the Arc A770. So if we are going for the middle ground in between these cards with good ray tracing performance, decent power draw, and a good overall performance, the RTX 3060 is the way to go. If you're going for the best rasterization performance and you don't really care much about those heavy ray tracing titles, the RX 7600 is the way to go. Even if you care about heavy ray tracing titles, the 3060 won't be the card to get. But still, if you want to go for heavy rasterization only and you don't really care about ray tracing, or you just care about light ray tracing games, for example Far Cry, Resident Evil 4 and so on, then the 7600 is the way to go. And if you want to go really heavy on the rasterization and possibly on some really interesting things to come, you can go with Intel, but this is the one that I can't actually advise. If we were talking maybe about the A750 that is way cheaper, then I could possibly advise you to get the A750 because once again, it's way cheaper. But at the same price, well, unless you're like me and you really like to test new hardware, to test new things coming out, new software and so on, I cannot really advise you to go to the Intel GPU. Just go to the RTX 3060, or once again, if you like better rasterization, go to the 7600. Otherwise, the Intel card is just for people that really like to be early adopters or beta testers, sorry, and want to test new things on a newer brand and kind of support Intel somehow. That's all. And well guys, that's all for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video as it really helps a lot, and see you in the next one.